us.
Let freedom ring from every hill, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Patriot Radio at its best. You're listening to The Sound of Freedom with your host, Ryan Brooks.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to a live edition of The Sound of Freedom on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm your host for this evening, Ryan Brooks. It is Thursday, October 25th, 2012. Time is flying. I know October's almost over, and we have a lot to talk about as usual. Folks, we're going to get right into this because I'm very, very excited to have a good friend of mine, a very special guest. It's his first time on The Sound of Freedom. He was supposed to be on last week, and unfortunately we were out on the road. Or was it 2 weeks ago? I'm losing track already, but he was supposed to be on just within the past couple of weeks, and we had some technical problems. I was driving around trying to get internet reception. I mean, it was just horrible, so we had to bring him back because, folks, this guy that you're going to hear tonight is an absolute juggernaut for liberty. He is the county coordinator for Campaign for Liberty and in Thurston County, Washington. He was a former Ron Paul presidential coordinator also in Thurston County. Excuse me. A good friend of mine. I met him at the Ron Paul campaign movement, rather. When I started to wake up and I finally put my foot down and said, I want to do something. I want to get involved. I'm going to get involved and start working with the Ron Paul campaign. This guy here is who I found online. He had a cell phone number on the internet. I called it, and boom. Just put in so much work for the campaign. A true leader. I mean, when this guy talks, people are like, wow, and it's for a good reason. You're going to hear it here tonight, folks. He's also a constitutional enthusiast, of course, and the president of the Conservative Alternative out here at a local college. My good friend Matthew Hayward is live on The Sound of Freedom with us tonight. Matthew, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Hey, man, I'm really excited to have you on. And I just want to tell the listeners, all right, Matthew is a good friend of mine. I can vouch for him. He's not some type of shady person. I know we've had some shady guests on in the past where they've said things and everyone's like, whoa. We are going to get we're going to do some thought-provoking stuff, to say the least. I'm going to play kind of devil's advocate here and ask Matthew to pump me up, to fire me up, because I know there's a lot of defeatism out there, just feeling down and beat down and just, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to get involved. We're screwed. I'm not doing anything about it. I'm just going to wait for it to happen. So I'm going to kind of play that card, and Matthew is going to get me fired back up, and I'm sure he's going to get you guys fired up. Once again, juggernaut for liberty, Matthew Hayward. Matthew, what is going on down there in Thurston County? I don't live there anymore, man. What's going on right now that people should know about?
Well, right now, one of the big issues is the CAO, and it is basically a branch of Agenda 21 in the UN on a local level where it has to do with property rights. That's one of the big issues here locally. But before I get into any of the political stuff, I did want to briefly kind of go into how I got involved in politics here in the more recent years.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, it all started with someone putting a capful of liquor into my bottle to help me get to sleep. Skip forward about 24 years, a couple of car accidents, and several treatment centers later. I went from being a drunk, closed-minded, neoconservative Bush supporter who at one point could have been quoted as saying that we should turn the entire Middle East into a sheet of glass, into a delegate for Ron Paul to the state convention in 2008. So there was quite a shift that took place around 2006 or so, and the reason why I mentioned the first part about the alcohol stuff is because that was a huge issue as far as my mental state and where I was at, not just while consuming alcohol, but quitting drinking was for me a personal decision, and it was a huge issue, and it took a paradigm shift. It took an incredible amount of circumstances to compile. It wasn't just one bad incident or one bad thing. It was complete and total personal devastation at every level. And it's really a miracle that I'm here today. But that's what it took for me to change my thinking. I wasn't able to hear people or listen to people. A show like yours, The Sound of Freedom, I wouldn't have listened to it. I wouldn't have heard it for 1 second. I would have turned it off. I would have been very contemptuous. And so what I went through, again, it takes what it takes. Some people come around more quickly, while others are more of the slow educational variety. And that's something I've learned over the last few years when I first got involved and started really digesting a lot of this stuff and started trying to go out and talk to people and wake people up about a lot of the different things that were going on and what our government was doing and could be responsible for. And it was like a fire hydrant. I was spewing at people, and they thought I was nuts. They thought I was completely crazy, and I was just totally on fire. And what I've learned is that that's not always an effective way to communicate. And sometimes with some people, you need to give them a piecemeal. So part of my disclaimer is that, I think we all have our own paths, and there are different messages that will appeal to us based off of our life experiences and what state of mind we're in when we hear something. And for that reason, I'm very supportive of a broad range of actions, ideas, and personalities. My primary goal is to fight intellectual suppression, not to convince you or other people that I'm right. That's my second goal. But I do think that everybody needs to be, I don't think everyone needs to be involved in direct political action. Nor do I think everybody should be a motivational speaker. I think we all have our talents, and we should use them to best achieve our goals. And, coming onto your show, I think for the sake of this show, I'm going to just assume that everybody listening has the same general goals to be as free as possible without hurting other people. And as I've talked to you about before, I'm all about full spectrum dominance. I think that we're losing our liberties and they're being attacked from every direction. And I think that's the same way we have to combat it, from every direction. So I don't think that there's any one answer, though, again, I've made it fairly clear, and we'll talk about it a little more. Mine is definitely direct political action as my primary function. So again, my path and message I try to share to help motivate people to learn and help them feel empowered. And I like talking with people who are slightly delusional and live in a state of cognitive dissonance, because it's really familiar state of mind to me, because I was there for so long and recently transitioned from that state to where I'm at now. So it's easier for me to have empathy and understand where they're at rather than to be angry with them. And a lot of those people, they're people who want change but feel powerless. And part of that is they don't fully understand how they're being manipulated. And so the trick is trying to explain that to them, and at the same time empowering them, because if they don't feel like there's anything they can do about it, they don't really want to know about it. Right. And that's one of the big things I've always heard people say growing up is knowledge is power. And what I've come to learn is that's absolutely not true at all. Knowledge is not power. Action is power. Knowledge without action is completely meaningless. You can't know your way out of a situation.
Right. If you know everything and you're just sitting in your house and not doing anything about it, I don't see how that's going to do you very good. I mean, I'm with you there, brother. Man, and folks, I'm just hearing Matthew talk, and it brings me back to times when we would stay up at his house for hours. I would try to skip out on work when I was getting out of the military. I'd drive over to his house as soon as I could, get there by lunchtime, and we'd sit there for hours drinking coffee, making phone calls for Ron Paul, literally hundreds of calls. And you're bringing back the memories of full spectrum dominance. We'd be walking around ranting, how can we help wake people up? What can we do? And yeah, I agree with you as far as, it's all about the kind of the packaging as far as how we present it to our fellow citizens. Would you agree with this, Matthew, that more people now than ever are closer to taking in what we're saying? I mean, do you think it's easier to get that message across because there's so much deception out there that people are starting to question, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people, I take it all with a grain of salt, but people refer to it as the consciousness movement and many different facets that I kind of look at as all being interconnected of a similar type faction, from the left to the right, to all sorts of different types of people who are atheist, agnostic, Christian, that are all sorts of different groups of people are coming at it from maybe different angles. But I think that there's a large awakening from all sorts of different belief structures of people who are being more and more able to see what's going on and understand what's going on. And so it's a matter of kind of getting the message out to people and letting everyone know that we're all in this together, We're all in this fight for freedom together, and it's a matter of not going up against each other when we have similar interests and ends.
Well, hey, Matthew, I got to stop you right there, my friend. We got to take a quick 3-minute break, but folks, we are just getting started. Full spectrum dominance. Matthew Hayward, Ryan Brooks, Sound of Freedom, Orion Talk Radio. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back.